who are you?
As far as I know, to you, I'm Jello Biafra. To other people, I don't know. It's a different name on my passport. Otherwise, I could never get into Canada, now could I?
What are some of your favorite outfits, Jello? I understand you love capes. Why do you love capes?
I didn't know I loved capes. I have a few. My mother made me one once for my wedding in the graveyard long ago, and I found a leopard one in a thrift store in, was it Covington, Kentucky, or Newport? They're both right next door to each other, and whichever of the two little towns, and they're both across the river from Cincinnati, that I didn't find it in is the town Charles Manson was born in.
Is there a theme for Canadian records?
I hate to say, but probably not. Although I guess there was more of a theme in the Quebec scene in the mid-'60s and maybe before and a little after, because, of course, it was a different language. And, the further east I've been in Quebec, the Quebecers, especially in Quebec City, say, we don't feel like we have a country because we don't really feel French when we go to France either. So a lot of these things were just restricted to that one market in one province in Canada and maybe a little bit east into the Maritimes where people were bilingual. I don't know.
And you have some selection of some French-Canadian rock or some Canadian rock here. What is the deal on this band here, Jello?
Le Popeye, which might actually just be Billy Hope and his orchestra, as it says on the drums there.
Canadian records always have great covers, at least the Quebecois ones, don't they?
Oh, yeah. I mean the color scheme on this and often outfits as well. I mean, this sort of color scheme is not common anywhere else, although I guess I've seen, what's the name of that band? There's a ska and beat rock band out of Liverpool or London that made stuff that looked like this. MIGIL 5. I don't know how you pronounce it. Migil, I don't know. But here we have Les Michels, Rhythms et Blues.
Looking really fine, and here is an ultimate example.
Prestige Records, too. Is the label real cool looking? Well, not especially, but it's kind of neat. That looks like what you had on last night, actually. Speaking of which, who did your implants and hair grafts? I never thought you'd have so much hair on your back, man. Did you go to Dr. Bosley and say, instead of doing the top of my head, do my back?
Actually, a few years ago, I took some pills, and one of the side effects actually said abnormal hair growth.
Well, that would explain a few things.
I think there's a lot more people out there that have hairy backs. They don't take off their shirts that often.
Does this mean you're going to have to go to the old Incas and get the trephination thing going to pull the hair out of the inside of your head?
I don't think I could handle that, although what is that all about? That sounds pretty crazy.
It was a form of medicine, and among some tribes in South America, your head swells too bad, you cut a hole in the skull till it goes down. They found skulls with great big circles taken out. Now, they concluded some of the people lived afterwards.
Jello, this kind of sums up Canadian rock right here. I love this. I mean, we're here in San Francisco, Altamont Orchestra. What is this?
Good question. I don't know whether it sums up Canadian rock. It is Canadian here, and obviously, they are at least as fashion conscious as Tartan Haggis or Cub were, or whatever here. And there's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members of the same family, and look at the teeth on that guy and all. They all got red eyes from the flash and everything. And this is some sort of lounge band, I guess. It's a double album, too. How else can you get Beer Barrel Polka and Bugle Call Rag and Sweet Roses of the Morn, The West, and Nest and You? Now, there's a title. And this scenic area here, I don't know where that would be, but it's flat, but it's got evergreens. And the gatefold of the double album is a really inspired piece of art as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, at least until you put the record on.
Jello Biafra, Ice-T, how did you initially meet him, and have you been offered any other collaborations with rappers?
There's been talk among mutual friends of something with the Coup or Del the Funky Homo Sapien, but they haven't actually happened. And Ice just took the first track off of No More Cocoons, my first spoken word album, the one called Message from Our Sponsor, and looped the first song on the first Black Sabbath album riff behind it and called it Shut Up, Be Happy, and it opens the Freedom of Speech, Just Watch What You Say album. And then somebody I'd already known at Sire called me ahead of time saying, well, it's about to come out. We kind of need to get your permission here. So in the end, it was good-natured negotiations, and I got paid fairly and financed the Tumor Circus album out of the Ice-T money, and got to know Ice-T over the years as well, which might not have happened otherwise. So it was a win-win situation to initially be sampled without my permission. So I'm mostly pretty liberal about that, as long as the people doing the sampling are cool about it. If it's something that that it isn't really going to get circulated very far, then I'm not going to get all weird about fees or anything, or pull an East Bay Ray and try and strangle money out of people. But when the deal is, if it does well for you, then you got to remember me, and that's kind of it.
Jello, where else have you ended up on rap records? Like, who else has sampled you that you've ended up that people might be able to check out?
Boy, I'm blocking on it now, but there's been quite a few, and I've been told I'm on one or two Public Enemy albums, but I've never been able to find it.
Have you been approached by any other rappers? Like you mentioned Dell and stuff like that. Is anything recently you've been approached with, or even in past? Like, has Puffy come after you or anything like that?
No, he hasn't, so he's deprived me of the opportunity to ask me what the hell he was thinking. We decided he needed to change his name from Puff Daddy to P. Diddy. What is that all about?
Are there any other sponsorships that are kind of odd like that, like Democratic Debates by Viagra? Can you think of any others that you've encountered, weird sponsorships of things like that?
I once found a Suzanne Summers sponsored mail-order anti-bedwetting program.
Oh, yeah, I think I've heard about that one. That's over the top. I think Lyle Wagner was involved in that, too.
I don't know about that one.
And Jello Biafra, Noam Chomsky, you've released Noam Chomsky on your record label, Alternative Tentacles. Is Noam down with Alternative Tentacles? Does he know his label made his Wesley Willis, etc., etc.?
I don't think he knows about Wesley. He knows about me because I sent him some of my spoken albums at the urgings of Ramsey Canaan from AK Press, who was the conduit for the Chomsky albums. They needed somebody to sell them into the music trade, since it was audio recordings, and they do the book trade. So it's actually AK that has brought us Noam Chomsky and Howard Zinn and Angela Davis, and independently we've contacted the people representing Mumia Abu-Jamal. We've done Jim Hightower and Greg Palast now as well. And then a while back, somebody did ask Chomsky about those CDs, and he said he didn't know about them. And so they traced back to a radio interviewer out of Boulder named David Barsamian, who was the one who was licensing them to AK Press. And I think both Chomsky and Zinn, once they realized it was Barsamian's project, and who went and licensed them to AK and whatnot, and talked to him, everything was cool again.
Alternative Tentacles is an incredible label, Jello. Congratulations, because I was thinking about that. Noam Chomsky is on your label, and Wesley Willis. Like that. Like, who else would have two people like that on their record label?
Not a lot of the commercial corporate punk labels, let alone Disney or Sony. We continue to operate outside the mainstream, and you may not like that in the end, saying, "Oh, you're asking me all about record sales of evaporators last night." But we do what we can, but we don't force anybody, including yourself, let alone Uncle Noam, to be somebody they're not.
Well, looking right here, we have Wesley Willis. What is this particular thing here winding up here, Jello Biafra? What is this particular drawing by Wesley?
It's Wesley drawing a section of the Dan Ryan Expressway, a big freeway in Chicago, and he's drawn a lot of different pieces from this perspective or somewhere around the Dan Ryan. What makes this one unusual is that you get the vehicles coming from one end instead of just going from the other end, and then woo, there goes your display. Sorry about that. And there goes my Narco Men poster. God, I wish somebody could unearth that movie. Anyway, But usually he has all buses in these pictures, as well as the little funky cars he makes up and all. But this one, it was trucks instead of buses, as well as a freight train going by. And in typical Wesley fashion, I mean, there was a bit of a Rain Man factor with Wes, where each bus he would draw that roared by on the freeway, or each of these trucks or train cars, you know, he has the numbers of each one, the license plate numbers, and artwork on the sides of some of the train cars, and usually on the buses as well. And, you know, they just whiz by and he'd remember it all. And some people would call that idiot savant, but I never thought Wesley was an idiot. But definitely there was a savant factor there, as well as the better-known chronic schizophrenia.
I guess, unfortunately, he passed away just recently.
Yeah, that was not a good thing. He had leukemia, and eventually it took him away. I don't know whether it was that or the sudden drastic weight loss he had from being in the hospital. Sometimes if an obese person loses weight too quick, their heart blows up, basically. And, you know, I don't think he wanted to lose his weight that way, that's for sure.
But his art lives on, and his music, through alternative tentacles. And Jello, I want to quickly ask you also about the moon landing. Some people think the moon landing is faked, and there's all these books on it. What about Mars? What do you think about this Mars probe thing? Do you think it's completely faked?
It's always possible. I mean, you could do that in a back room at the Mattel factory real easy, but how are the big armaments companies going to make any money that way? So maybe it's real. I don't know. But I think the Bush's idea of a mission to Mars is a very good one, as long as you put him and Cheney and Ronald Rumsfeld and John Ashcrack and the rest of them all on the ship and leave them on Mars.
Jello, winding up here, you also have some amazing album covers that you've got here. Could you please explain some of these? Because some of these are just over the top, and I really think they're awesome.
Well, here we have one where a guy tried to be Ferrante and Tyker, but overdub himself as a dueling pianist thing, but he calls the album Seymour Gibbons Plays with Himself. Did he realize what he was doing or not? I don't know. He does have one. They can't take that away from me. And no, now that you've done this, I don't think you can. And I can't get along without you very well. With my eyes wide open when I'm dreaming, only make-believe. Who knows? This may be getting to be a habit with me. Who needs you? To each his own. Lovely way to spend an evening. Now that I look at these titles more closely, I'm beginning to wonder if he was in on the joke after all. And if you think the Evaporators are well-dressed, well, you have not yet beaten the Continental Sound, who I believe are just a sing-along barbershop thing. Happy Days are here again, gospel medley, etc. But dig those outfits. Where are the dead? Is this by Venom or Slayer, one of their many thousands of attempted clones over the years? No, it's actually by Reverend Jerry Falwell, talking about all the reasons you're going to go to hell unless you give your life savings to Jerry Falwell, I suppose. And when Falwell says, "Where are the dead?" on this, that was sampled and used to open the Porcelain Forehead EP, that amazing Ottawa hardcore band.
But how about yourself, Jello? What is your favorite food? What do you really enjoy?
Well, I think yet another tragic, bitter experience of my life has been when the Brock's Candy Company stopped making their malted milk speckled Easter eggs. That was possibly the greatest junk food ever invented, and therefore the best food ever invented.
Jello, I was listening to the radio, a commercial radio in Los Angeles, and you were played on a classic alternative station. What do you think about this classic alternative? They have classic rock. Now they have classic alternative.
Well, the funny part is what people are looking back on and calling classics, even though the amount of records that sold back in the day was just a drop in the bucket. People forget that in those supposed golden days of, the bands before us, like the Avengers and the Weirdos and the Screamers, and then us, and then the hardcore stuff, Black Flag, Minor Threat, and of course DOA, Subhumans, the Neos, etc. People forget that for every one little record one of our bands like that sold, another 10 to 50,000 copies of Saturday Night Fever or Hotel California were sold. And so for people to look back and say, well, instead, what we think are classics are not Pat Benatar, but this, that's very interesting. I mean, in a way, it bums me out that people now see punk as being something so safe, and there's you can play it a certain way and automatically get popular and all that. It's just kind of a negation. It's kind of sad that Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables is some people's Crosby, Stills, and Nash, but I still think it's a good album.
Jello, lastly here, the band The Joker's Wild. They're a Northwest rock and roll band from the 60s. I think one of the members of that band had a son that's in a punk rock band. Is there any connection between 60s punk, 70s punk, 80s punk, etc.?
Oh, there's many of them. I mean, the current lineup, if they're still going, of Victorian Pork with Tony Bardak from the original band and then his own teenage daughter fronting the band. There's one example. Carl Perkins' sons being his lead guitarists later. Hank Williams III showing the talent and definitely attitude may skip a generation and all. And who's a must-see if and when he comes to Vancouver. And I know he does from time to time. And I think the drummer from Poison Idea, one of their many drummers, was the one whose dad was in Joker's Wild. And then you have the garage band from D.C., the Hangman from the 60s, What a Girl Can't Do and all that. The sons of their manager are the Stahl brothers from Scream and Wool and all.
Oh, and I was just telling you the other day that David Clayton Thomas's guitarist, his sons are in the band Death from Above from Toronto. So it's kind of neat when it all continues on.
Yeah. I mean, not everybody does what their parents do. I mean, some examples the other way. There's a Derek Trucks band who appeals to Allman Brothers fans because of the father, Butch Trucks, being the drummer and all. And we've seen Julian and Sean Lennon come and go. And so you never know. I mean, I think partly what gave Hank III his edge is he wasn't raised in the Tinseltown part of Nashville. His father kind of forgot about him, and he was raised by his mother, I think, in a little town in Georgia or something for a long time. And so the axes to grind has definitely improved his music, I would say. We got to end this. I'm out of time.
Well, thanks so much, Jello. Just want to lastly ask you, what is the hardest that Wesley Willis ever headbutted you?
I would say later on when he came to visit here, and he usually crashed at my place in San Francisco and all, since I was one of his special friends, he would not just say, do the usual say rah, bonk, say rah, bonk, and all. With me, it'd be say rah, bonk, 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 bonk. I think the most he got me in a row was 22 times. And so the last 2 or 3 times he stayed here, I had a callus on my forehead just like he did by the time Wesley left. So I got headbutted a lot, but I wasn't like what happened with Winston Smith or Grotus's drummer, where Wes got him a little too hard and they were seeing stars for a while.
Well, thanks so much, Jello Biafra. Keep on rocking in the free world, and doot doodaloo doo.
Quack, quack.